process that we go through when we go through an initiation, and share some experiences about what that's like for us and how we can support each other more effectively and those who rely on us for spiritual support and guidance.
All right, so to begin with, I just want to start off by kind of setting the stage. When we're talking about initiations today, we're really talking about rites of passage. And those things that we go through that set the stage for a new way of functioning in our lives. I've noticed in particular that rites of passage have a tendency to be missing from our more mundane kind of lives in our culture. But there are still a few that remain. So I'm wondering if any of you can think of any rites of passage that we go through as a society in this day and age.
In Mexico, we have quinceañeras.
Okay, so it's like a Mexican thing, right?
Yeah.
You turn 15? The little ladies, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, what else?
First day of school.
First day of school, that happens every year, right? What else? Driver's license, right?
When you finish with school.
Graduation.
Graduation.
Yep. Any others?
Are you speaking on an individual level or as a
As
society?
a culture, yeah, as a society or a culture.
What about our presidential election? That was a kind of a rite of passage in theory.
Good much indeed.
And so what is the purpose of a rite of passage?
New beginning.
Or it could be an ending.
And an ending?
Death and reward.
Say that again?
Death and reward.
Inclusion.
Say more.
Inclusion into whatever your rite of passage is about. You're including yourself from being separated into your new persona.
Okay. Does anyone know who Abram Maslow is?
Philosopher, basic philosopher, who in the order of society and the various levels of how we meet our goals. The great pyramid of our needs.
Yeah, so he's most famous or most known for the hierarchy of needs, right?
Right.
Starting at the most basic primal level and culminating in self-actualization. So he actually had a lot to say about rites of passage and initiation. He described them as a spiritual crisis, which are defined as events that reshape our psyches and lead to an updated or enhanced spiritual understanding of our existence. They are meant to bring us closer to an archetypal image of a spiritual concept. Any thoughts about that initially?
Yes.
And they are?
Spirit cannot have crisis.
Say that again?
In your spiritual practice, you cannot have crisis.
Okay.
You can have an emotional breakdown, you can have a mental breakdown, you can have a physical breakdown. Spirit cannot be touched.
I disagree. And I think that the disagreement comes in the way that we are defining crisis as individuals. So talk to me about your definition of crisis.
It's a breakdown. A crisis is something that you can handle. Something that you're unequipped to handle. Spirit is not unequipped to handle anything.
So I will agree with you there, but I will say that when we're sitting here in these bodies, what we go through is preordained, right? So the crisis is determined by our spirit.
Your lower self and your higher self are separate. Your higher self cannot be touched, which is part of your lower self. You're still in the spiritual practice.
So I'm going to
But
ask
also
you.
the higher self.
So I want
That
you
is
to.
this.
I want you to think about what I just said to you for a second. Our higher self determines what we go through.
But it can be changed.
Who said change?
Predestination is not necessary.
So crisis, right, is something that happens to us when we feel that we cannot handle or we don't have the resources to handle what's being presented to us. And so what happens when we are presented with a crisis? What choices do we have?
Cave or learn.
Say?
Cave or learn.
Cave or learn. So what does that mean overall for our spiritual development? What is our spirit trying to tell us, trying to teach us?
Get out of your butts.
Yeah, sink or swim, cave or learn, break or build,
Live or die.
or both.
Or both.
So he describes spiritual crises as a form of peak experience, which consists of the following things: a sense of unity with our inner and our outer selves, a strong positive emotion, transcendence of time and space, a sense of sacredness, an understanding of what seems to be a paradox, objectivity and the reality of all insights, and positive after effect. So I want you to think about that in terms of something that we do as pagans, as Wiccans, as witches, as clergy, where we seek a unity with our inner and outer selves, or our higher and lower selves, where we work towards strong positive emotion or ecstasy, when we work to transcend time and space, when we work for a sense of sacredness, or a look to understand a paradox, or maybe allegory, when we look at objectivity and the reality of all our insights, and positive after effect. What does that sound like? Sounds like a ritual, right? Anyone else see that? So Dr. Christina and Stanzakal Groff, they're medical doctors, say that ritual and myth, or ritual and allegory, are actually our parents in a culture, right? Each culture has a set of myths and a set of rituals that are actually our spiritual parents. The ritual is God, because it's very physical, and it's how we act out the message from the goddess. So the ritual is spinning the wheel, and the goddess is the termination of the wheel. These experiences are meant to be healing at their core, even though they might be painful in the moment, right? So like potentially awakening the Kundalini could be painful in the moment, but it's overwhelmingly healing afterwards. Ritual, initiation, rites of passage are all meant to help us understand appropriate ways of being, thinking, and acting. And it's important to understand that rites of passage are transmitted by cultural elders. Right? So the folks who come before us are essential in transmitting this way of being and helping us understand what's appropriate, how to behave, what our new role is. In our society, we've got grandparents, parents, godparents, teachers at school, principals, college professors, and various mentors. So our elders have kind of taken shape, but also there's a little bit less reliance on elders. I mean, I've noticed that in my culture, well, in my family in particular, it's absolutely unacceptable to disregard elders. But I've noticed that like nursing homes are a thing, and our elders tend to get forgotten about, disregarded, or invalidated, their wisdom lost. But as far as growing as a people, absolutely essential to kind of take them seriously, kind of get what they have for us. Anyone know who Joseph Campbell is? Yeah, he's an author specializing in myth. Right? Like he's the huge myth dude. In my opinion, he's like the myth dude. And he's got this book called Myths to Live By. And in this book, there are several different myths that kind of chronicle various stages of life, historically speaking, across cultures. one of my favorite myths is, talks about the rite of passage of becoming a man. I forget which culture it comes from, but there was a father and a son, and they were going out to hunt. And the son was a little hard-headed, didn't really like to listen to his dad that much. He was at that age where he was really kind of smelling himself. Does anyone know what that phrase means? And he really kind of thinks he knows what's up and knows what it is to be an adult and to be a true man. And so he was really disregarding his father, and a horrible accident occurred, and his dad got really injured. So his dad was like really pissed. He was like, you could have just listened to me, and like, I would not be hurt right now. And the son was really lacking in motivation and not really apologetic for how he was like, Dad, this is like your fault. You're really old and you don't know what you're doing anymore. So they get back home, and the dad is like, all right, fine. You're a grown man. Get out. Leave. Go do what you got to do. So the son leaves, and it takes him like 3 hours to realize he has no clue what's going on out there. Like, it's starting to get dark, it's getting chilly, he forgot how to start a fire, and like he's hearing all the sounds in the forest, and he's like starting to get terrified. But his pride is like, I can't go back home, like I'm a man, like leaving. So he wanders about for a few days, and he wanders into a new tribe. And he comes across the chief of the tribe, who is horribly grief-stricken. He had just lost his son in a horrible accident. And so he adopts this rebellious kid and like treats him like gold. Showers him with gifts, clothes, gives him anything he needs, like you're the new chief's son. And he's treated as such by the whole of the village. And no one questions that like this is not the real son. No one, draws into like, oh, you're adopted, you're not one of us. Like, no one cares about any of that. And so, eventually, the dad comes to look for his son and is like, well, where you been at? And so, he wanders into the village and he's like, hey, look, it's my son, what's going on? Like, oh snap, you did good for yourself, but this is not the lesson that I had in mind for you. This is not like, this is a complete accident. Like, you lucked out, kiddo. But it's time for you to come back home and finish understanding what it means to be a man. Because right now, you still don't know. Like, you're lucky right now. And like, this dude's grief has done you pretty well, but you're still not grown up. And so the chief of the tribe is like, I'm not taking my kid, like, what are you doing? Get out of my village. And so there comes to be a battle. The chief is like, all right, we're all gonna go out. Real father, chief, son, we're all gonna go out and we're gonna fight. And the son is going to be the one responsible for killing the one that you don't want to be your dad. And that's where the myth ends. It doesn't tell us who the kid actually kills. That story is an allegory. Works on several different levels, obviously. So hopefully by the time we're done with this workshop, you'll understand what was relayed in that story. But right now, what we want you all to do is to consider any rites of passages that you've been going through, that you've undergone, and kind of discuss similarities or differences or what have you.
So, what I'd like you to do is just kind of close your eyes for a second. Tune into your heart. I'm going to ask you to think about something, and I want you to get in touch with the feelings that it evokes. So, every crisis brings about change. Every change in our lives, whether it's graduating from high school, whether it's initiating as a first-degree clergy, whether it's a shamanic experience, whatever it may be. Every one of those things begins with an ending. We often think about we're about to be initiated into something and we're looking forward. We're like the fool in the tower. We're ready to take that step off the cliff. And I want you to get in touch with one of the initiations you've been through. It could be within the tradition, it could be another initiation, another passage that you've been through. And I want you to think about, before you took the step, Maybe you worked all the way through, you think about you worked all the way through first degree. And all of the while you were doing that, you were looking forward to what that would bring for you. And then you're at that moment of initiation, and whether it was self-initiation or whether it was live initiation, think about how it felt at that moment before that initiation began. And then remember what it felt like during the initiation. And then think about what happened after. Okay, you can open your eyes. So what are some of the feelings you had before the initiation? What came up for you?
Like when you don't know what happens next.
So kind of wondering what's going to happen next, anticipation, right? What else?
Nervousness.
Nervousness.
Fear.
Fear. Why fear?
But the unknown.
Of the unknown, yeah.
Mine was joy.
Huh?
Mine was joy, overwhelming joy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we all have, because every change does begin with an ending, because there's a part of us that knows that we're about to step off into something new, which means in some way we're leaving something behind, an old way of being, right? And we're stepping into a new way of being that we're not 100% sure what that's going to be like yet. And there's another man named William Bridges wrote a book called Transitions, talks about how every change begins with an ending. Before we can get to the new beginning, we go through what he calls the neutral zone. And this whole idea of doing this workshop came up in chat, in one of Lord Don's chats, probably about a year ago, when we brought up the idea of every time we talk about every initiation brings a shift. Things fall away, things begin to fall away in your life, right? Things that no longer serve you. You start doing your shadow work, and more stuff falls away, and then you discover you have more shadow work. And then it doesn't stop, right? And so, and you're saying, wait, I'm not sure I signed up for this. Okay. But ultimately, it is exactly what we signed up for, because it's the growth of our souls. And so, one of the things about this is, especially if you're doing self-initiations and you're not around a lot of other Correllians, and you've got mentors, you've got people that you talk with, going through that can be intense, right? Going through those shifts. And so we want to talk about today, we're going to give you a little sheet of paper here. And one of the things we want to do is kind of share these stories about what was it like to go through these initiatory experiences for the purpose of, as clergy, being able to look at the people that we work with and look at the people that rely on us for mentorship, for guidance, and for support. And think about not just getting them through to the initiation, but then after that, knowing what's coming for them, because we've been through that. We've been through it ourselves. How can we be a support and guidance? How can we take our own lessons learned and how can we take our own lessons and apply them to working with other people? So what we'd like you to do is to pair up or get into trios, whatever works for you. And we want to take about the next 20 minutes and just have you talk about this. We've talked at you enough. And to answer the questions that are on this page, that basically think about that initiation you had in your mind. Think about how you felt during it and immediately after. What happened within the next couple of weeks? What did you notice change in your life over the following few months? What situations or conditions fell away? What new situations came? Who provided significant support? How did you get yourself through that time? What did you do individually? Some of us are more reflective and we do our studying, and some of us seek out other people. What did you do? What were your methods for getting yourself through that time of change until you really began to feel like, okay, I think I'm beginning to get this? And when you found yourself struggling alone, what happened? And if you looking back, what would have been helpful? And you may say, you know what, it all went right. It was fine. Right? But in my own situation, one of the things I found was I did living the Wiccan life, and I did the self-initiation, and that all went great. And then every self-initiation after that, no matter how I planned to carve out the time, right? I had 2 kids, I had 2 dogs, and I had everything set. I had 2 hours. I remember particularly my 2nd degree self-initiation. I had 2 hours set aside, and I knew everyone would be out of the house. And as I began, of course, they all came back. And, you know, all of a sudden, outside the door, there's 2 inches of wood separating the 2 worlds that I was existing in at that moment. And it was really, I ended up repeating the self-initiation to try to get peace, and it happened again. And I said, okay, I'm getting a message here. I know the one message I'm not getting is I shouldn't be doing this. The message that I took from it was to be able to focus and to put all that stuff aside and to really focus. It forced me to really zone in even harder on the purpose for which I was doing what I was doing. And so, but it was really interesting how that interference came up. And then the rest of the story is boring. Anyway, so but I want you to tell your story, not me to tell mine. So spend some time talking through this with your partners in this discussion. What were some of the things, what are some of the things that occur to you? You don't have to answer all the questions, but then this part is for you to be able to take some notes from your conversation to take away what you get out of it, okay? So let's think about the next 20 minutes and find somebody or a couple of people and have that conversation. And for those of you who may be watching on video, do your own reflection and write down some notes in answer to the questions that we talked about.
Hi. Oh, sorry. Hi, everyone. We got Rev and Alyssa. Okay, we'll let them tell you who they are.
Reverend Aisha. Reverend Shannon.
And I'm Reverend Mike.
Okay, yeah. So everyone know everyone. So what are you discussing about initiations?
The experience as well as what happens afterwards, the shedding of the skin, so to speak.
The shedding of the skin. I like that. So, do you have any comments you want to send out there to everyone?
I said mine.
Who else is going to speak, or are you just going to send me on my way?
I think that throughout life there are many opportunities for initiation, not just clergy initiations. Marriage is an initiation, birth is an initiation. Any significant life change is a type of initiation. And I think it's important to be aware of those things in your life and embrace them and roll with it and not fight it.
Very well said.
Did you come with prepared comments or what?
She prepared them at home by herself.
I got it written in.
I'd say during my first, just like many of us, that I really didn't have access to a local group when I first did mine, so I did mine the self-initiation, and so I'm like doing it myself at this point. I've read books, I've studied. I was pretty young at that point still, and so I was kind of like, am I doing this right? I hope I don't do this wrong. I have to do it myself. I know this is important. So I was very anxious coming up into it, but as I was doing it, I realized that the training that Lord Don wrote and prepared and all of the books that I read, that it was just like a normal, like, not even like a full ritual. It was like I was doing a little spell. It was not like, oh my God, I'm going to do it wrong. I'm going to do it wrong. And that's why I was very anxious about it when I started. So during it, it relieved my stress as I was doing it. It was very easy. And then afterwards, I was like, phew, that was cool. It's done. So I was like really relieved that it was done. And I'm like, hey, I feel a little different. This is kind of cool. But for my second degree, they actually had a group a couple hours away, so I actually was able to do a live initiation at that point. And that was really cool because it's not only just me, it was everyone was there, so it's like the fellowship aspect. Because that's one of the great things about illustrations, if you can ever come, is it's not just sitting here listening to workshops. It's, sitting down, chatting with your friends that you see every day online, but you might not see in person. So the actual, to be there with everyone else participating, that's really fun and, and a special experience. So if you ever can do a live initiation, I recommend it over the self-initiations, even though there's nothing wrong with the self-initiations, and they have no greater, it's the magical intent and the ritual is not different between the live and the self. So if you can't get a live initiation, the self is just fine. I just want to point that out because I do have some students that say, well, I want to do a live so bad, I think it's better than the self. The live and the self-initiation isn't better, it's just different. You were pretty young when you got your first initiation, I remember you telling me. So for the viewers, how old were you when you got your first initiation?
I was 13.
And going into the initiation, what were your feelings? Like they were Jon, Reverend Jon and Reverend Phoenix were talking about.
Well, I have to think back 38 years. Actually, no, not 38 years.
Okay, we won't have to give away our ages.
No, 40 years now. I was certainly excited, and I felt that I had made a commitment because I had made a dedication the previous year, but I was still studying other things. And of course, in the Correllian tradition, we don't have to stop studying other things. But, I mean, there's a commitment that's involved. So I think for that initiation, I felt very settled. And very much that I was moving forward. After a period of uncertainty. Because I had studied a number of different paths and made my decision, although I will have to say that looking back, I'm not entirely sure how much you can say you made a decision at 13. How much you can say you really studied, but it certainly seemed like I had.
Yeah, I think all teenagers seem like they think they know it all when they're learning something. Yeah, but it is a growing experience. So even when you initiate and you learn as a teenager, when you move on, you know, obviously you grow. My husband likes to tell you likes to call you the most well-known fact person in the world. He said if it's about Wiccan and paganism and you just didn't know and you couldn't have had a clue, he's like, you always ask Lord Don. I think he knows everything.
Well, it's very nice of you.
I think your general appearance he helps too. He's like, I don't think I've ever seen him without his suit and tie. And then I go over to ladies' stuff.
I think this is a great idea to be asking all these questions of Don.
I think so.
I think so. But we can still answer ours.
I think I'm going to go around in a little bit and get everyone that's here.
That would be an interesting thing.
And, you know, everyone that's at home, you know, I'm going to start reading the questions that Jon and Phoenix provided. So if you want, you can grab a piece of paper and you can, you know, come along with the experience. Okay. So let's see. How did you feel during and immediately after the initiation?
Yeah, this is what
I think we asked Lord Don for what but that was before. So now we got during and immediately. I
would say after I felt exhilarated.
What about you, Lady Steph? How did you feel during and after?
During, I was impatient. I wanted to just happen and get over because I was just so excited. I didn't have any idea what was about to happen, and I didn't care. It was wonderful. And then after the initiation, I felt almost like a release of like, okay, so what next?
And what was really nice is, you know, during the ritual, you know, I was trying to control my emotions, and it was really nice to know that during the process, I wasn't the only one. It's like, you know, it was really nice.
Yeah.
And it's like that, what it was, I was just releasing, you know, some of the, you know, things from the past and things like that, and it's like, you know, you start, once you get your breath back, it's like you're breathing new air. I mean, it was, most of us experience it, you'll find out later, it's just, it's wonderful, it's scary, it's just, it's so yes.
So, good.
It's all the
Don't spoil me.
Alright, so this basically concludes the presentation that we have. We are actually right at the top of our hour. So thank you all very much for participating and sharing your stories with us.
There's one thing I'd like to share. When you talk about reassurance, and we talk about being there, and we talk about support, I think there are some things when you think about any of the degree programs that we have, right? Any of the clergy initiations, whether it's self-initiation or live initiation, they're both wonderful initiations. And everything, part of the reassurance, we can't anticipate or solve every problem, every confusion, everything that may come up for any of us. And we've all experienced those times, right? And so you can't anticipate it all and write a manual for it and say, okay, if this happens, I do this. First of all, everything that we do in any of these degree programs, everything you do from the very first lesson is preparing you for what comes after the initiation. And you are absolutely, if you've been through any of those, you go through the 12 lessons, you do the initiation, what you have been doing for that year has prepared you. You have everything you need to get through all of the stuff you need to get through as you continue your growth process. The other thing is that initiation doesn't just happen with us in the room or with yourself in the room. Initiation happens at the level of spirit. And whatever comes after the initiation, we not only have each other, but we also have spirit who is prepared to support us and will absolutely help us learn all of the things we need to learn. And so whatever degree program, whatever class we've been through, that initiatory experience, when you get to that point, it means you now have the tools. It's like in Return to the Jedi when Luke goes back to finish his training, and he says, I've come to complete my training, and Yoda says, no more training do you require. Already know you that which you need. And Luke goes, then I am a Jedi. And Yoda says, not yet. Still gotta do your work. So there we are. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.